You remember the way the bus engine rumbled as it pulled away, dust rising in the air, your footsteps pounding the pavement as you ran, waving, hoping someone would shout for the driver to stop. But it didn't. You were left standing there, breathless, clutching your backpack, staring at the shrinking shape of the bus that carried your classmates forward without you. Or maybe it wasn't a bus. Maybe it was your own family. The dinner table where the plates had already been filled, where the conversation was already flowing, where laughter had already started before you even sat down. You slid into your chair, quietly, no one asking why you were late. No one noticing the hollow look in your eyes. That's what it felt like, growing up as the child always left behind. Not in some dramatic way, not abandoned at a train station or forgotten at the airport. It was subtler, quieter, and maybe that's why it hurt more. It wasn't about being physically lost. It was about being emotionally out of step. Life kept moving forward. You were always one step too late. And the wound wasn't just about moments missed. It was about what those moments told you. Because when you are always the one left behind, a message takes root deep inside. I am not worth waiting for. You carried this message like a stone in your pocket. Heavy, invisible, always there. You didn't speak it out loud, but it shaped everything: the way you entered rooms, the way you approached friendships, the way you chased love. Think back. Do you remember being the child still tying their shoes when the others were already out the door? The one finishing their story long after everyone had stopped listening? The one trailing behind on the sidewalk, walking faster, trying harder just to keep up? No one told you outright that you didn't matter. No one needed to. You learned it in the pauses. In the empty seat. In the sighs when you lagged behind. In the way people forgot to include you until it was too late. This is the overlooked grief of being left behind. It doesn't scream. It doesn't bruise. It whispers, you're not fast enough. You're not important enough. You will always come last. And you believed it. Because how could you not? Children are like mirrors. They believe whatever the world reflects back to them. If the world reflected hurry, impatience, dismissal, invisibility, then you grew up seeing yourself as someone not worth waiting for. But here's the haunting question. What happens to a child who learns over and over again that life will always leave them behind? It began so quietly you almost didn't notice. Maybe your parents were stretched thin, juggling bills, working late shifts, or carrying their own invisible storms. Maybe there was a sibling who demanded more, the sick one, the gifted one, the rebellious one. And so, without anyone ever deciding it, you became the child who could be delayed. It's postponed. Overlooked at first, you tried to protest. You cried out from your room, but no one came. You tugged at your parents' sleeve. They brushed you off with "not now." You lingered at the door, hoping someone would notice, but their eyes were fixed elsewhere. Slowly, your young mind started recording these moments like evidence. My needs don't matter. My feelings can wait. I can wait. Psychologists call this emotional neglect. Not loud or violent, but silent, consistent, and deeply shaping. Unlike abuse, neglect leaves no obvious scars. What it leaves instead is a hollow space, a gap where safety, affirmation, and presence should have been. That hollow space became the atmosphere of your childhood. The birthday, where your name was said too softly. The school play, where no one sat in the audience for you. The little victories: a drawing, a grade, laugh that floated into the room but never landed anywhere because no one was listening. Children don't have the words for this kind of grief. They just feel it in their bodies. A tightening in the chest, a lump in the throat, the heavy ache in the stomach that whispers, you are on your own. And so the wound deepened. You weren't left behind once. You were left behind again and again. Enough times that your nervous system stopped expecting to be caught up. Enough times that hope itself felt dangerous. This is what researchers call invisible grief, because no one sees it. The world sees a child who looks fine, maybe even strong, maybe even mature for their age. But inside, you're carrying the loss of a childhood that never really held you. And so the belief solidified. Like cement setting in your bones, I will always be the one left behind. But children are not powerless. Even when forgotten, You found ways to survive. You learned that if no one was going to wait for you, you'd better learn to move faster. If no one was going to notice you, you'd better learn to make yourself small, quiet, unproblematic. If no one was going to protect you, you'd better learn to protect yourself. So you adapted. You built a mask. Maybe your mask was self-sufficiency. You packed your own lunch, did your homework alone, stopped asking for help. Adults praised you for being so independent, never realizing that independence was just loneliness dressed up as strength. Maybe your mask was perfectionism. If you could perform flawlessly, maybe then they would wait. Maybe then you'd earn a place at the table, a voice in the room. Praise became a substitute for presence, and achievement became your ticket to belonging. Or maybe your mask was invisibility. If being noticed meant being disappointed or left behind again, better to disappear altogether. Better to blend into the wallpaper than risk the sting of being forgotten once more. And people admired these roles. They told you, you're so strong. You're so easy. You're so reliable. They didn't see that these weren't strengths. They were survival strategies. Because the truth was this: you weren't thriving. You were managing. You were carrying the unbearable weight of being left behind and turning it into something palatable for everyone else. That's the cruel irony of childhood survival. The very mask that saves you as a child becomes the prison that confines you as an adult. Because the moment you put it on, you left something behind too, your authentic self. And deep down, you always knew it. Behind the mask of self-sufficiency, perfection, or invisibility was a child still running to catch the bus, still hoping someone would notice they were missing. You grew older. You shed your childhood clothes, but not the wound. Because wounds don't disappear with age. They deepen. They echo. They find new ways to live inside you. As an adult, the story of being left behind replayed itself in subtle but powerful ways. In relationships, you felt it as fear. Fear that others would move on without you. Fear that friends would forget to invite you. That partners would leave you behind for someone better. You found yourself overgiving, overchasing, overproving, desperate to make sure you weren't forgotten again. In work, it looked like running. Running to meet deadlines no one else worried about. Running to stay ahead even when there was no race. You overachieved not because success brought joy, but because falling behind triggered panic, the same panic you once felt standing alone. Watching others walk away, in self-worth, it became a belief. I only matter if I keep up. I only matter if I stay useful. I only matter if I'm perfect. That belief made rest feel unsafe, joy feel unearned, and mistakes feel catastrophic. Psychologists call this hypervigilance. Your nervous system always scanning, always bracing. Am I about to be left behind again? Am I enough to stay? And then came the rejection sensitivity. The unanswered text felt like abandonment. The late reply felt like dismissal. A minor exclusion reopened an old wound so deep it flooded you with shame. You might recognize this rhythm. You push harder to stay included. You prove yourself to avoid being left out. You collapse in exhaustion, convinced you'll never catch up. The irony is devastating. In running so hard to never be left behind, you still feel exactly the same, trailing, forgotten, unseen, because the wound was never about running speed. It was never about being too slow. It was about the meaning you attached to those early moments. If they left without me, I must not matter. And so the child's truth became the adult's prison. Here's the truth you were never told as a child. You weren't left behind because you were unworthy. You were left behind because the people who should have waited couldn't. They were too distracted, too overwhelmed, too broken in their own ways to notice what you needed. But children don't understand complexity. A child cannot say, my parent was carrying unresolved trauma. A child cannot reason, my family was too burdened to see me. A child makes only one conclusion. It must be me. I must not be worth waiting for. And so, in order to survive, you betrayed yourself first. You abandoned your own needs before anyone else could. You silenced your hunger for love. You dulled your cry for attention. You slowed your steps so no one would trip over you. You made yourself the one who didn't need catching up. Why? Because children will sacrifice anything for attachment, even authenticity, even themselves. Psychologists like Dr. Gabor Maté explain this painful trade-off. A child's nervous system chooses belonging over truth, because to a child, being alone means death. And so you told yourself the lie, I don't need to be chosen. I just need to stay close, even if that means disappearing. But here's the gut punch. The very thing you thought would keep you safe is what kept you wounded. In choosing attachment over authenticity, you left behind the most important person of all. And that's the deeper truth. The wound was never about being late or forgotten or overlooked. It was about the silent abandonment you learned too. Practice against yourself, because if no one else was going to leave you behind, you would do it first. At least that way, you could stay in control of the pain. There comes a moment when the silence becomes unbearable. When you realize you've spent years running to catch up, yet the finish line never appears. When you see that no matter how much you give, how perfect you perform, the wound still whispers, you'll always be left behind. And then it hits you, the truth you avoided for so long. No one is coming to rescue the child you buried. The bus will not turn back. The birthday cake will not be saved for you. The chair at the table will not suddenly be pulled out waiting, with your name on it. But that doesn't mean you are powerless. It means the opposite. Because the adult you are now carries something the child inside you never had. Choice, agency, the ability to turn around. Look that child in the eyes and say, I will not leave you behind anymore. This is the shift, the moment where survival transforms into responsibility. Where you stop waiting for the people who failed you to finally see you, and you begin to see yourself. It's not easy. It feels unnatural at first, because your nervous system has been wired for chasing, for waiting, for proving. Stopping feels wrong. Choosing yourself feels selfish. But it is neither wrong nor selfish. It is necessary. Think of it this way. All your life, you've been sprinting after the bus. Healing begins the moment you stop running. Sit down on the curb and whisper to the child within you, we are not late. We are right here. And I am with you. No one else can reparent the child who is always left behind. Only you can. And that realization, painful as it is, carries the seed of freedom. Because the story doesn't have to end with abandonment. It can end with reclamation. So how do you begin to heal the wound of always being left behind? Not by running faster. Not by demanding that the world finally stop and notice you. Healing begins when you turn inward and reclaim the child you abandoned in order to survive. This is where inner child work comes in. It is not about pretending you had a different past. It is about meeting the younger version of yourself and giving them what they were denied. Start by asking gentle questions. What did I need back then that I never received? What did I long to hear when no one was listening? What would it have meant if someone had waited for me? Write down the answers. Speak them out loud. Picture your younger self sitting across from you, waiting, and imagine giving them the words, the care, the presence they were always chasing. This is also the work of the shadow, the hidden part of you that learned to suppress neediness, longing, and fear. Shadow work asks you to bring those rejected parts into the light, not with judgment, but with compassion. To admit, yes, I was needy. Yes, I was slow. Yes, I wanted to be chosen. And that is human. Healing is not glamorous. It is slow, repetitive, sometimes frustrating. But every time you pause to check in with yourself, every time you validate your own emotions instead of dismissing them, you are doing something radical. You are refusing to leave yourself behind. And slowly, your nervous system learns a new rhythm. You stop sprinting after the bus. You stop proving your worth. You begin to feel safe simply standing still. Safe knowing you belong not because someone chose you, but because you finally chose yourself. That is how the cycle breaks. Not with dramatic gestures, but with small acts of consistent care. Day after day, your life has been shaped by the story of being left behind. The empty bus stop. The quiet seat at the dinner table. the invisible grief of waiting for someone who never came. That wound taught you to run faster, work harder, give more, and expect less. It carved masks of independence, perfection, or invisibility that may have impressed others, but left you aching inside. And yet, here's the truth you must carry with you now. You are no longer that child. You are the adult who can stop the cycle. You are the one who can turn inward and say, I will not abandon myself again. Because healing does not erase the past, but it changes the future. You may never rewrite the moments where you were forgotten, but you can choose to never forget yourself again. You can reclaim what was lost by practicing presence with yourself, by slowing down, by saying, I am worth waiting for. Think of it as a promise. The child who once ran breathless to catch up will finally be carried. The adult you are now will finally sit beside them and whisper, we are not behind anymore. We are exactly where we need to be. And maybe this is the most hopeful truth of all. You never had the childhood you deserved, but you still have the future you can create. A future where you are not chasing, not waiting, not overlooked, but chosen, seen, and held. So if these words resonated with you, I invite you to pause right now. Leave a comment and tell me, what was the moment you first realized you were being left behind? Sharing your story may help someone else feel less alone. And if you want more deep dives into the hidden wounds of childhood, the paths to healing them, subscribe and stay connected. Because this journey isn't meant to be walked alone. Remember, you are not late. You are not forgotten. You are not left behind. You are here, and that is enough.